George,
Yeah.
why is Al Pacino yelling Attica in the movie Dog Day Afternoon?
Because he wanted to make Attica known to the world, and he wanted to let people know that Attica still lives in the hearts and minds of the American people. Attica means all of us. Attica is all of us. Attica lives in all of us. Attica is a prison located in Buffalo, New York. It holds 22,000 prisoners. At the time of the Attica Rebellion, it held close to 4,000, which means that it was overcrowded. And as a result of too much prisoners in one prison, it became it became very hard for people to be there. Amongst other things, of course, the conditions of Attica caused a lot of problems for the administrators. But Attica means all of us. That's the quote, that's the motto that we have used throughout the years. What Attica? Attica is all of us. Attica is famous for its brutality. Attica is famous for the prisoners that took over the prison and brought the conditions to the world. That's why Attica is so famous. Attica is famous because it has four prisons within one prison. Four prisons. Attica is famous because my brother could go into the prison, and I would never know that my brother's there unless my family tells me.
How comes you know Attica?
How come I know Attica? Because I was in all four prisons. All of them. I was transferred from one section to another because they felt that I was a rebel, quote unquote, and I was dangerous. They say that I was a danger to the administrators, and so they kept on changing me from one section of the prison to another. That's why I came to know that there was four prisons in one.
How long did you stay in Attica?
14 years.
So most of your youth.
I spent it in various prisons, not only Attica. I spent 5 years in Attica, but I was in various other prisons, you know, throughout the 14 years that I spent in prison. Uh, but Attica became the most dominant because it was a maximum. And of all the prisons in New York State, Attica was the worst. What happened in 1971 was that the prison became so intolerable that inmates could not tolerate it any longer. And they took it over to bring news to the world that we needed help. It began with two inmates that were playing with their hands, and as a result, the guards decided to lock them up unjustly, and so that brought everything to the cold, and people just couldn't tolerate it no more. And so they took over the prison. Mind you, they took over one section of the prison because it's four prisons. But the only way they were able to take over the prison was that there's a section on top of the towers that is called Times Square, and Times Square is like four sections, and so the gates at that point broke down, and the inmates were able to go from one prison to the other prison. That's how they were able to take over two, 2/3 of the prison.
And you were a part of it
Yes,
too?
yes, I was. I was part of it. I've always been a part of it
But you
since
were just a member, or did you were a kind of leader?
I was a leader.
How did you lead?
I led because I represented the Spanish population of the prison. I spoke for the Spanish population.
Because you have a Puerto Rican background, right?
No, because I have a Hispanic background, and Puerto Rican has nothing to do with it. There was Panamanians there. There were not Ecuadorians, Panamanians, and Cubans, and a few Dominicans in the prison. And most of them cannot speak English. And what happens was you go to a prison and you can't speak English. They give you rules and regulations. How could you read them? You see, so I represented this Hispanic population, as far as bringing the issues of the Hispanic to the world. That's how I led. That's how I was a leader.
How was the treatment by the people who were leading this prison?
First of all, I need to say that most of the guards were white. There was no Hispanic guards at the time. There was no guards at the time. Mostly were whites, rural people that came from the locale. I have no insight whatsoever to people who come from New York. So the population was, like I said, half Hispanic and half black. And whites that come from rural areas of upstate, they have no insight as to the conditions of these people.
How were the conditions?
The conditions were horrible, very horrible. You take a shower once a week. They gave you toilet paper once a month. The commissary was horrible, horrible.
Doctors?
The food in the place was always pork, 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 pork. There was no variety of the menu. The menu was always the same, So it was horrible, and there was people with some people with various backgrounds, such as Muslims that don't eat pork, and that's all they served. Now the library is in a condition. There was no setup for any type of education. So the library was, a whole bunch of garbage, books.
And the medical treatment?
The medical treatment was horrible. I must say that the doctor was German. I must say that, but he was, to me, we called him. I forgot his name, but to us, he was a Nazi. He was a Nazi German because he considered everybody the same. He always gave a pill for all the medical needs of medical conditions that came before him. And you had to come to a window that had bars, so you never had contact with the doctor, and there was no nurses there. So the medical conditions were very horrible, very horrible.
So there was a kind of rebellion, and you were kind of a leader, one of the leaders, right?
Yes.
What happened then?
Well, we took over. First of all, we took over A block. The prison is combined of A block, B block, C block, and D block. We took over A block. I wasn't in A block at the time. Somebody else was. I was in C block. They took over A block. Then after they broke down the Times Square, they went to the other prisons. How did I became part of, I've been part of that development a long time. I've been talking to prisoners throughout the years about the conditions, what they need to do, etc. But fortunately, it came to a point where prisoners just couldn't tolerate it no more, and they took it over. I was a leader of Attica, but I was also a leader of an organization at the time in Attica, which we called ourselves the Young Lords Party, which was a radical group, which is, radical, but it was Hispanic orientated. And basically we was fighting for civil rights, like Martin Luther King fought for his civil rights. We was also fighting in prison for civil rights.
And hostages were taken.
Hostages was taken, 33 hostages was taken.
Did you take hostages?
Not personally, no.
What happened then?
And after the hostages were taken,
Mhm.
they were brought to one yard. They were brought to D yard, and they were put in a circle. They were blindfolded, and then we started negotiating with the administrators. The administrators at first didn't want to negotiate. They wanted us to give up the hostages, and we wasn't going to give up the hostages. And so we decided that the best way of doing this was to go beyond the administrators and go to the public. So we decided for Amsterdam News to come in. We decided for NBC to come in. We decided for ABC to come in. We decided for politicians to come in. Herman Badillo was one of them that came in. and other politicians throughout the state, and that's what happened. We wanted better educational material installed in the library. We wanted better food. We wanted more recreational time. We wanted basic stuff. That's basically what. And we wanted to be treated as human beings.
But
We
what?
want
Yeah,
treated as human
of
beings.
course.
We wanted Hispanic guards to come in, and we wanted black African American guards to come in as well.
What happened then?
Well, after 5 days, the Governor Rockefeller, decided that he wasn't going to negotiate no more, so he broke up the negotiating team. All the people, or the observers that were in there, he told them they couldn't come back in, and he was going to storm the place. And he stormed it. What happened was they brought in two helicopters, and they spread pepper gas in the yard, and it became very cloudy. You couldn't see, nobody could see each other, and as a result of that, in Times Square, the guards came in, the National Guards and the state troopers, and they started shooting. I mean, shooting at point blank, and as a result of that, 29 inmates were killed, and 11 hostages were murdered by the state of New York. We never did anything. They did. We treated them better than they treated themselves.
And what happened then?
And so they took over the prison. They made us crawl in the mud. They took me, put me up against the wall, me personally, put me up against the wall. They put an X on my back and told me that I wanted to locate somebody in my family. I said, why? They said, because we're going to kill you. And this is all in documents. We're going to kill you. I said, well, you could contact my sister in Puerto Rico. And they said, okay, we'll contact your sister in Puerto Rico. And the National Guards were ready to fire at me and kill me right on the spot. I had an X on my back. I was on my head was on the wall like that. And then a senator, who was a senator, he came, he saw what was happening, and he stopped that from happening. So they took me, they ran us to a gauntlet. Most of us ran to a gauntlet, and as we was running, guards on this side, guards on this side, they were hitting us with clubs, hitting us. They got to a cell, and then when they put me in the cell, this guy came and told me to put my chin on the wall, on the bar, and I put my chin on the bar, and he took his gun and he clipped it, and he was playing Russian roulette with me, and he put it to my head, and he did. He said, I'll come back later. And they did that all night. They played with me all night like that.
So they tortured you.
They tortured me, exactly. And when I was crawling in the mud, in the yard, two guards were on top of me, and one was kicking me on my side, kicking me. The other one was putting my head in the mud. He said, oh, you speak, you speak, you speak. And so that's what was happening to me. There was other people that were tortured. There was other people that were killed in the yard, after the results. L.D. Barkley, as an example, as an inmate who was one of the leaders in the yard with me. He was one of my good friends, and he was killed after they took over. They came to him while he was crawling in the mud and shot him. Shot him point blank, right in his head, killed him. State troopers did this. And state troopers, when I was crawling, I couldn't see where I was going. They kept on putting my head like that in the mud. And then they told me get up. When I got up, I took off all my clothes, and then they put me up against the wall, and they put an X on my back, and they said, you are now dead. And they were gonna kill me. Thank God, man. There was this senator. His name is Senator Dunn. He came into he was looking from the catwalk. He was looking, and he saw that they cocked their guns to shoot me, and they didn't shoot me. So it's a miracle. It's a miracle.
He shot
me.
you?
No, they didn't shot me, but they hurt me. They tortured me. They hit me with clubs. They played Russian roulette all night with me. That's why, I did the suit.
You did sue the state,
I sued the state of New York, yes.
which was one of the biggest
One of
lawsuits.
the biggest suits in the world, $1.8 billion suit.
So you must be rich now.
Me and my wife should be rich, but we not.
What happened?
Well, what happened was that, after 35 years of fighting in the courts decided to settle, and they settled for 12 million, 12 million, you know, and people that were leading the case asked me, because they called me by Chad, so they said, Chad, what we gonna do? I said, I don't know, what you want to do? They said, we want to settle. I said, okay, let's settle. So we settled for 12 million.
How much did you get out of this?
I got 30,000.
That's all.
That's it.
So there's
30,000.
where's all the money gone?
It went on to, all right, you gonna talk about the money. The money just, it came and went, it came and left.
Yeah, but where's all the other money gone?
The other money is
because
still floating. It's floating amongst lawyers. I have no idea. It's 30
I don't
million.
understand.
30 million.
How is it still floating? It's
Floating.
yours. It's for the inmates, right?
It's for 5 of us that's left.
Because the rest of you died, right?
Yeah, the rest of us died.
So where's the money?
I have no idea. Right now, that's being discussed. I got a friend, his name is Tyrone. He's discussing that to try to see if we could get a few million for us. But I'm not in New York. I'm here, so I don't know what's
But you had
happening.
the best lawyers at this time, right?
Yeah.
What the names of them? Kushner?
No, Margie Ratner, Bob Boyle, William Kunstler, who else? Denny Myers, Dennis Cunningham.
Did they get their money?
Some of them didn't even get the money. Most of the money went to one particular lawyer, and her name is Liz Fisher. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. I think that's one of the reasons why, one of my friends named Tyrone, he wants to fight for it, to try to get that money.
You want to fight too?
Do I want to fight too?
Yeah.
Yes, I want to fight too.
So you need another lawyer.
Yes, I need another lawyer.
George, at this time when that came to public, there were some famous people involved, right?
Yes, there was John Lennon, Al Pacino, and
Did you meet Al Pacino?
yes, I had the pleasure of meeting Al Pacino. I went to his house, I sat down with him, and we discussed the need for some finances, and he gave us some money.
And
And Elton John, he made a song. He gave us money too, but he made a song on Attica. He made a song, yeah.
John Lennon.
John Lennon made a song, you
And
know.
John Lennon gave you money too,
Yeah,
right?
John Lennon gave us money too. Yeah.
And now the case is that you are still not really compensated.
No, we not compensated. It's still up in the air. But I need to say this. It's not a question of money. It's a question of honesty. It's a question of values. It's a question of being upfront and stating when you're wrong.
Did somebody from the officials said sorry because of that order, which led
Nobody
to torture
ever
you?
said sorry. Nobody ever said sorry. That's why I made us. I didn't want to settle, because I wanted the state of New York to say, Che Nieves, and all the other people, we are sorry for what you did. We would have we wouldn't need no money if they would have said that, but the state of New York never said it. They refused to acknowledge their own fault. Refused to acknowledge it. And as a result, today I'm still fighting, because I want them to take account for what they did to us in prison.
Do you want to do another documentary or film about that?
Yes. You know, I want to bring some people together that are still alive and see. Eric Roberts, as an example, is willing to help us. He said that he was willing to help us make another documentary.
So there are just five of you still alive.
Five or six. There's a few more, but they fell the way by the wayside. You know, there's only a few of us that that we could account for that are still responsible. Everybody else, sort of like throughout the years, they 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 got scared and shied away. So it's only a few of us left that still say Attica is all of us, and Attica is all of us.